can't pour large by yourself. That's why I pour with somebody. And I've poured bigger pictures than this where there's even 3 or 4 people pouring at once. Because it's such a rigorous and specific way of painting. You know, I came out of a time in New York in the early 80s and late 70s where there was a music scene that was first generation punk and things like that, and was doing that at the same time. And I always wanted painting to have the same immediacy, realness, and danger and presence that I felt in that music. Because painting had become in some ways very, very, and it still is in some ways, very safe and mannered and decorative. And working with the immediacy of the wax, the speed, the heat, the danger of it, was very similar to me, to the same things that I was interested in painting. And so for me, wax, hot wax, because I don't paint with encaustic, has always been a link to a visceralness in the act of painting. It's so specific that the act of painting defines the narrative more than the narrative defining the act.
You take those down. Not yet, let me see what I want. Okay, let's go in the tank.
I will paint on paintings for years, you know, and build up underpainting and surfaces to react to. At this point, I've been doing it so long that I have pattern recognitions that I know how to react to. It's almost like a jazz musician that improvises, but improvises off of all the same things. And in some ways, it's not even crucial as to what the first 2 or 3 rounds are. I can then riff off of those. I mean, I've used wax in a lot of different ways when but it's really about building up a history and compressing and expanding time simultaneously. So it's not so crucial what the first 2 or 3 rounds are, you know. They can almost be anything that I can react to. And so, you know, I've been working on paintings, over paintings for years, and I worry about when I've got to start from scratch when they're clean again, because I have all this history that now I'm getting a chance to react to. And if I start from a clean place, I don't know that it's going to have the same kind of detail, nuance, time sequences that are jumped. I mean, one of the great things about painting is that it's like it embodies time, that you can have things that happen quickly, things that can happen slowly at the same time. You can have things that happened a year ago and then things that happen on top of that. So it's really like time. And most painters rush that process and try to finish that process in a sequential manner. In great abstract painting, that time sequence is split far apart. You've got fast moves, you get slow moves, you've got things that were done 3 months ago on top of things that were done now. So it's more like the way that life is, where time is much more complicated. Everything you know about painting, you already know. I think you really are painting about some way about sex and some way about death and some way about trying to make sense out of those 2 things, because in life, I mean, that's how life starts and that's how life ends. I don't mean sex in the way that people think about sex. I get called on this a lot, but I mean sex in the fact that there is in sex there's an exchange and a creativity, where one thing becomes 2 things and then becomes one thing. So by sex, I just mean that it's more of a concept about this merger and creativity of a shared experience. And in death, it kind of finishes it. And then in rebirth, it's like you take from what you created, what stopped, and then you reinvent what you're doing. And so you're in the middle of trying to mediate those 2 things, and that's what the rebirth is. The rebirth is like, how do I mediate those 2 things? So yeah, I mean, it's dramatic, and I do that because I think that when people talk about painting academically, they go to sleep. But if you talk about painting in terms of sex and time sequence and life and death, then people understand that painting is immediate and real.